Call to order the work session of Goodyear City Council, April 26, 2010. All items listed are for discussion only. No action can or will be taken. Councilmember Souza has actually fractured his leg, but he's in good spirits and he's doing fine. He will be on the phone with us, and he'll be on the phone for this meeting. And in fact, he'll do the invocation and the pledge for the next meeting. So he's doing fine. He just has to be home right now. We only have one item on our work session agenda, and that's a report from our Senate Budget Committee, Senate Citizen Budget Committee. No, you're better than that. You're better than that. But I want to say thanks, and I'm sure others will as we progress over this over the next several days or weeks. You all have worked very, very hard and spent innumerable hours, not only at meetings, but in preparation for meetings. So it's been a tough grind for our Budget Committee, and we're so thankful for you hanging in there. And we're coming to the conclusion. The fruition of your efforts starts tonight. So, Mike Kayak, I believe you're briefing on behalf of the committee.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Let me start by saying thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you all tonight about the results of our effort from the last couple of months. I would briefly like to take a couple minutes to thank a few folks, myself, make a few general comments about the material I'm going to present, and then move quickly into the actual material. First, I want to thank the City Council for the opportunity to become part of this process. At the times, this was a very difficult task, very contentious, very complicated, very difficult. But in the end, we prevailed. And by doing so, I believe you've engaged some of the members of this community in a way that will truly shape the future of this city. And I appreciate that opportunity. Second, I want to thank the members of the CBC. I ask anyone present from the CBC to please stand. In my view, the CBC members reflect the wonderful diversity that makes Goodyear such a great place to live and work. I am truly honored to represent them this evening as I make this presentation. Thank you, CBC. Finally, I want to thank the city staff and Dick Bowers. It's been an amazing sense of patience that has allowed us to persevere and complete our task, especially for those who have little or no knowledge of managing a city. So it's much appreciated. The sheer volume of information generated and presented to the CBC as a result of our inquiries and questions was very, very impressive. Thank you, city staff, for your hard work. It's truly appreciated. So before my presentation of the detailed recommendations, I want to make a couple general comments. First, the CBC worked very hard to bring these recommendations to you. Hours and hours of work together and individually went into these recommendations. I strongly encourage the City Council and the City Manager to work together and take the time needed to thoroughly evaluate the recommendations being presented tonight. Second, many of these recommendations are not easy. They will take a varying amount of effort to implement, everything from potentially public votes to additional focus groups, formal approval of the City Council, and possibly even changes in city ordinances. Last, the recommendations of the CBC that I'm going to present are being presented tonight as a consensus view. That is, the recommendations are the result of integrating together all of the various inputs to come up with a common theme that defined a specific course of action for a recommendation. The final report that's been prepared has detailed information from each individual members that goes with these summary level recommendations. I encourage you to take an opportunity to take a look at some of the details behind the presentation. So this evening I have 27 specific budget recommendations, and they will be presented in priority order as defined by the CBC. My presentation approach is to review the top 15 recommendations in detail, briefly discuss recommendations 16 through 21, and then simply review recommendations 22 through 27. My preference is to go ahead and deliver all of the recommendations to the council and then come back for comment and discussion. Recommendation number 1.
Mike, one second. Dick, are you on?
Yeah, come on.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Recommendation number 1. reduce employee compensation/benefits. There's just no getting around the fact that employee compensation is a large component of expense against the general fund. That's a fact. The key here, though, is when looking at employee compensation, CBC recommends that you do it in such a way that it's competitive. And that is, any action that you take should be consistent with actions of other city governments. The CBC had a handful of different possible approaches. For example, the preference would be for furloughs in lieu of layoffs, a graduated pay reduction as opposed to a flat reduction across the board. That is, the higher paid staff would take a greater share of the reduction. Eliminate longevity plan altogether for all staff. Increase employee share of health care costs. There's clearly a number of different possible options that can be taken when it comes to reviewing employee benefits and compensation. Recommendation number 2, go forward using a zero-based budgeting process derived from current actual expenditures to right-size the city departments. Clearly, there's many different possible approaches for putting together a budget, but the CBC believes the city should consider a proven budget process used in industry, that is zero-based budgeting. Fundamentally, we spent quite a bit of time looking at actual costs, what we refer to as a run rate for the city expenditures, and that is a proven mechanism for evaluating what things actually cost. On top of the budgeted run rate, if you will, looking at one-time expenditures above and beyond what's necessary for fiscal year 10 to arrive at some sort of a balanced budget is the recommendation. Lastly, one thing that we heard through a number of different department managers was the concept of keeping track, keeping metrics, keeping book on how things are going. The CBC recommends that the council consider the concept of what's known as a balanced scorecard as an approach to measure overall performance consistently from department to department. In other words, establish a standard of excellence that you can compare all departments in terms of some basic measure of success or effectiveness. We believe these measures are simple, but very powerful in terms of taking a structured approach to putting together your budget for next year. Recommendation number 3, restructure current debt. For most CBC members, this was the most technically complex item discussed, but it received a significant amount of attention and was discussed numerous times over the last 3 months. The concept in simplest possible terms, can the city effectively refinance debt? The recommendation is looking at the PIC bonds for spring training facilities and looking at other alternatives with regard to general obligation funds and rainy day funds to literally either buy down or refinance that debt. I simply am not an expert in this field of debt financing for city, and I recognize this is a complicated item, but it certainly warrants some merit simply from the point of view of the city does have some financial resources that they can access. Could they leverage them or use them more effectively? That's the question tonight. Number 4, support economic development for new revenues. No matter how bad the budget problem may seem, the CBC consistently supported the idea of keeping economic development going, plain and simple. Whether that be focusing on attracting new business that complement the city, focusing on retaining business and business retention, or focus on expanding businesses that are currently in existence in the city. There are a number of different approaches that can be taken, but we believe that continued economic development and focusing on economic development makes sense. Number 5, adjust rainy day fund policy to help with recession. If it's a rainy day fund set up to help offset one-time funding issues, then the CBC simply believes it's raining. And it's time to take a look at this with the hope that bright and sunny days are ahead. But clearly, can capital projects that are critical to the city be funded from rainy day funds in lieu of additional bond funding? Can rainy day fund be used to buy down debt, as I mentioned earlier? Clearly, the capacity that the city has, that's the one thing that the city's got going for it, is that they have excess funds in the rainy day fund. And the question is, how can you best invest that money? That's the challenge I give to you. 6, enhance stadium revenues and retail. Clearly, we were very impressed with the overall operation of the stadium and how it was managed and the methodology that was used day in, day out. Very impressive presentation. Clearly, we believe that there should be consideration for other seasonal or permanent retail operations at the ballpark, if at all possible. I think the key thing there is that there are lots of interest in terms of what could be added to the fair. For example, could a restaurant be opened up as a part of the ballpark and stay open through the course of the year? Enhancing revenues and retail opportunities at the Goodyear Ballpark, are there more things that could be added, even on a temporary or seasonal basis? And third, revise the management approach to the ballpark, using more of a model like a profit and loss center as opposed to a city department. That clearly has something unique about it, and it's a unique aspect of the city of Goodyear, and it should be given some unique consideration. Number 7, suspend capital projects unless for public safety or revenue recovery or savings. Clearly, there are some choices that can be made to potentially help manage the budget situation. Although authorized to go forward with the capital improvement projects, it may be prudent or wise to prioritize or reprioritize those projects and only select projects that make sense, that are for the good of the community and the citizens, but yet that are fiscally responsible with the budget at this time. Number 8, reduce service level of bulk pickup. I recognize this subject has been a lot of discussion with this council and this city. So I won't pretend to be an expert on speaking for everyone in the city, but clearly the CBC felt that this is something that should be taken a second look at, specifically decreasing the level of service, simply because of the nature of economic times. However, if it's possible, for people who do want additional service beyond the regular routine, can some sort of a special fee structure be set up to where people who want weekly bulk pickup, for example, can have that service, but have that service at a fee? Number 9, eliminate frozen positions. This item also received quite a bit of discussion, and fundamentally the idea is eliminate job positions that simply won't be filled in fiscal year 10 and 11, and only come back to those jobs that are going to be filled by salary employees. The concept is, going forward, if the positions aren't occupied and the city is functioning effectively, then the question is, why do they need to be continued at this point? As the city progresses through economic recovery, that's the time to come back and potentially re-justify those positions as necessary going forward into the future. Number 10, cut operation costs using green thinking. The concept here is to look at the numbers of different ways a paper is generated by the city for city business. The CBC believes that cutting the print edition and mailing of In Focus magazine is an obvious choice. However, there are other things as well the city generates that are, quote, in a hard copy form, that in theory they could be posted directly to an archive or directly to a website and avoid the generation of paper altogether. Number 11, assess primary property tax levy yearly to maintain current revenues. Again, another area of a lot of technical discussion in terms of understanding the difference between tax rates and levies and whatnot. The concept is simply this: is there a way to maintain current revenues from property tax regardless of what the current valuation is? The CBC believes the city has that within their purview to make that kind of a choice or that kind of decision in order to maintain necessary revenues to keep the city viable. Number 12, no new debt 2010-2011. Simply put, hold off on any additional debt if at all possible to lessen the burden on the general fund. We believe that this is a prudent choice given the state of the city and the state of financial matters. Number 13, erect a billboard along a major right-of-way. The CBC recommended consideration for an electronic billboard along I-10. I understand that the council has already discussed this matter at this point, but the idea was to look at creative ways to look at advertising revenue from the city. For example, can the city advertise the ball games on city vehicles during the course of the spring training? There was a number of different kinds of ideas that were filtered into the information in the report. The item that stood the strongest and loudest for the CBC was the concept of the electronic billboard. Number 14, consider new fees. There's a number of different areas that the CBC felt that there were areas where new fees could be added into the city's infrastructure. For example, false alarm, photo enforcement, community events, ballpark fees, and other activities. Although there are areas that currently operate with fees, there are a lot of areas that don't generate fees as a part of service provided by the city. The number of areas and the viabilities in terms of what makes sense, that clearly requires some additional assessment and evaluation. And the CVC, although we believe that these make sense, the city would have to look at it from a financial viability point of view. Would they truly recover the cost as a result of implementing a fee? Number 15, sell naming rights for seats to venues. Clearly, the Goodyear Ballpark has lots of opportunities, but where potentially name recognition could be sold, or naming rights could be sold to generate revenue for the city. Other venues, too, in terms of city buildings and parks, could a corporation potentially adopt a park, for example, and take over some aspect of its maintenance? That there's certainly some opportunity there for consideration. The practicality of the legal aspects of doing something like that would certainly need to be evaluated. But are there opportunities for the city of Goodyear to sell naming rights to its citizens, and more importantly to the companies that do business here in the city? In the next area, I'm going to move now to general recommendations. These recommendations did receive some voting from the CVC, but not clearly as significant as the first 15 as I presented. Number 16, free salaries. If item number 1 is not looked at relative to salary reduction, as a minimum, the CVC believes that salaries for 2010, 2011 should stay frozen, again, until economic recovery moves further down the road. Number 17, consider service provisions to other jurisdictions. Clearly, like the fire protection agreement that's being put together with Litchfield, can police, road maintenance, street maintenance, light maintenance, can those activities be shared with other cities for the purposes of generating some revenue? Number 18, share SRO costs with schools or other partnerships. The question fundamentally for us was, should the SRO be paid by the school where the service is being dedicated? In other words, the concept is whoever's really benefiting from the service, should they not pay their fair share? That's the question we put to you from the CVC. Number 19, change billing frequency of utilities to quarterly. The idea is that for some people that may not make sense, but even allowing that as a possible option for citizens in the community, that may potentially help reduce some costs relative to, quote, billing for city services. Number 20, engage employees in identifying cost reduction scenarios. We clearly felt that we were just a group of citizens, we had our point of view, but the people who have lived and worked this on a day-to-day basis, they should also have a voice in this decision-making process as well. Even to the point, I recommend you consider the idea of maybe even incentivizing the city employees in the form of some form of rewards for identifying cost savings that would benefit the cities. Number 21, expand volunteer support, for example, citizens patrols. We clearly heard there was opportunities for people to come volunteer to be part of the city from a day-to-day point of view. We certainly heard that relative to, for example, the police department, Parks and Recreation. Are there other things that people, if they were asked to come participate, would they show up? For example, some of the things that go on during the spring training and the games at the ballpark. Volunteers were clearly shown to be very, very effective in helping reduce the operating costs of that ballpark. We believe that there are other opportunities as well. I think it's a matter of just going on and asking the citizens for their support. The next group of recommendations were included as a part of this presentation as they represented the consensus view. These particular items are not weighted, but I'm going to present them to you in sequence. Number 22, freeze paid training other than mandated by law or for public safety. Again, here, is this where a community can come to the city and bring training on a volunteering basis, if you will, for the city employees? Number 23, consider policy for cost recovery rate on many service. Parks and Recreation fees was the one place where we spent a lot of time talking specifically about that item. Consider the sale of city assets, for example, the skate park. Can the city create opportunities for private corporations to step in and privatize the operation of some of the things that are provided by the city, potentially generate some revenue, or at least operate at a lower cost than the city? Number 25, maximize energy conservation. Something as simple as putting motion detectors into offices, that the lights will come on and off depending upon whether or not someone's in the area. I know my company has implemented that practice and has significantly reduced the cost of electricity in our facility. Number 26, consider further exploration of privatization competition. For example, competing trash service, competing road maintenance, or streetlight maintenance are all possible things that are rote for the city, but could there be some potential savings by looking at going out for competition for some of those same services? And finally, number 27, set and enforce stringent alarm ordinance. We all believe that the rate of false alarms takes away from our city police and their ability to do their job. They happen, and that's part of having an alarm service. But the concept of repeat false alarms, the question is that a fair share cost use of the city police? At this point, I guess I would certainly like to hear questions, comments from council. I don't know if any of the other CBC members want to make a comment, but I certainly invite, for the sake of the CBC, I'd invite your feedback.
Okay, thank you. Let me just start, and then I'd like to go to Dick. We'll speak right after I do. But, you know, there's a lot here, and they're arguable, as you know.
Right.
How can we tell, because it's the citizens talking to us, they're our boss. You had anywhere from 17 to 25 people on that committee, I guess. Mm-hmm. What of these recommendations reflects the majority of those views?
The first 15 represent the strongest items where the majority was at the highest level.
So more than half of the people would want us to do 1 through 15.
At least. Yeah.
That's correct. Okay. Dick, did you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate what the committee has done for the council as well as the citizens of Goodyear. There are so many things that you brought before the council to be considered, and certainly to make comment at this time on any one of them would not be fair to us nor to the committee. I want really, as you recommended, to study this proposal or these recommendations by the council and come back to you at some future date with some sort of resolution and some acceptance of some part of what you're presenting. There are interesting concepts that you've put before the council, and I think it will take some time for us to evaluate the availability and what it will do to the community as a whole. And that's important to me, that what we do here and what your recommendations do is that they satisfy the citizens of Goodyear. We've done this budget process for the last 3-4 months, and I frankly, as one individual, agree with what the city manager has said. We've cut and cut and cut, and we can't cut any more if we're going to be an efficient community. As far as salaries are concerned, we've always done this over a period of years with evaluation of how our salaries compare with other cities. When we set the values or the dollar values for each position versus what other cities were providing their employees, and 9 chances out of 10, we were level with them or just slightly beyond. So that's one area that I really want to consider and review again with HR. Those are my consensus. Again, I appreciate the committee's efforts and what you've brought forth to us, and certainly deserves a serious consideration. Thank you very much. I appreciate the effort all of you put forth.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lortano, would you like to comment?
Very briefly, I think you did an excellent job putting it together. I also found it very interesting, the individual reports. I would agree with Councilmember Sousa that for me, I would like to get some more information about these and find out which of these are actually, like, get some dollar amounts and get some more facts and figures associated to each of these proposals, and that would help me go through. But I found them all very interesting and well thought out, very well thought out. And I do like the fact you thought, your committee clearly thought outside the box and looked for everything. Right. And being new to this budget process, I really am glad that you guys were doing it this time. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
Councilmember Osborne?
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased with our Citizens Budget Committee. From the very beginning, when the second time that we had, when Mayor Kavanaugh had stated, let's have this committee, I believe that it's proving to our citizens that we do have transparency and that your opinions do count, and that was most important to me. And I know that two council members have already stated, let me go through this, but I did go through it. And I have some opinions right now, and I'll go ahead and share them. And some of these opinions, they are opinions that aren't necessarily something that we have to go ahead and do. These are opinions that if it came to the point that I had to choose one thing or another, this is my opinion, what I choose. This is not stating that I want it done now. Okay, I want to make that perfectly clear. But I tried to go through your different recommendations. I read everyone's thoughts and their suggestions. And if you don't mind, Mayor, I'd like to take the time and go
No,
through
that's
some
what we're
of
here
them.
for.
Okay.
Everybody can take the time.
All righty. I will try to, you might see me jumping around a little bit just because a thought occurs as it relates to something else. But I tried to go with your recommendations as they're put forth. When it comes to, number one, the reduction of employee compensation and benefits, first of all, my own management way would be that I see an employee coming with a benefit package. And within that package, you have many layers. And of those layers are the perks and the health insurance and the vacation time and the holiday pay. But truly the spine of an employee is their pay scale. And so I believe in cutting back on the pedals per se before we mess with the spine. And so if I had to make a decision, it would be, first of all, as a small business owner, I pay 7 holidays a year. The city employees get 11. I would reduce a couple of those right there. That would alleviate any furlough. That would alleviate any kind of pay reduction. I believe that management has already put in the longevity pay elimination. And also, as a small business owner, I know what it takes to have to pay health insurance and to ask our employees to put in 20 to 25%. I don't have a hard time with that because I can truly see, excuse me, what, rest of the nation has to pay. Let's see. Zero-based budgeting, I understand that. Run rate, of course, there again, small business, that's pretty much how we do our own stuff. I believe that the restructuring current debt, I would support. However, when it comes to that restructuring, if we are speaking of general bonds that can only be the bonding for parks, I would not be in favor of using that entire amount to restructure the debt. I do not think that's wise, and I do not think that's fair. So I would have to negotiate with me on that one. Support economic development. I highly support that. I believe that this department actually could use more funding for marketing and advertising. There again, I'm a retailer, so I understand that. You've got to spend money to make money, and marketing is key to that. I will have to say, when it comes to our in focus, I believe that we need to reach out to our citizens and ask them if they would read it online. Whether it is in the next in focus, we put in a little paper in their postcard that they can cut off or mail back or something and say, hey, you know what, put me online. But I have to tell you, I have many customers that come in and they say, oh, I read the in focus cover to cover. It's also highly respected. It's a marketing tool in itself. It's an award-winning piece, and I hate to see that it be changed. But I do agree. Let's see who wants to read it online and save the postage and the paper. Let's see. I also believe that a couple years ago I got the the Economic Development Department to go to the tourism conference with me. And sure enough, while we were there, we found magazines that are out there across the nation where they can advertise to bring in baseball tournaments, softball tournaments, things like that, where we can get our name in front of national groups. I believe that those tourism packages for golf, wildlife, photography, baseball, any of those things to promote ourselves, we should be able to do. I believe we need to continue the business workshops for business retention. We need to have a little more of an outreach for the businesses. I believe in different areas with manufacturing, retail, restaurants, clustering, like with accountants and attorneys. And also we should be promoting incubators. You've asked for an adjustment of the rainy day fund. I agree with this. However, this is not the year to be using that money on capital projects. We need to lower our debt, cut spending, but continue to strive for our future. I do not want to have our heads buried in the sand. Ballpark operations, you've stated to use it as a profit and loss model. From day one, I said this is a losing proposition. However, and actually back then I stated in my own business thoughts that I saw this as my own watch department where I lose money, but I'm happy when the guy comes in to get his Rolex repaired and buys a pair of diamond earrings. I see the ballpark in that same fashion. Let's see. Eliminate frozen positions. I can understand that. False alarms. It was stated in here maybe increase false alarm fees. Well, I think the police department's having a hard time getting some of the people just to pay the fee in the first place. I know that we are working on the false alarm ordinance. We just haven't come to a consensus yet on it. I do believe that we need to increase the user fees as the report indicated to us. I think you all agreed upon that. I did not quite understand the cost recovery for the EMT services. I think I need to get a little more information on that one. A couple of questions that I had that John, maybe you can get back to me on. Let's see. Employee benefits start after 30 days. Is that correct?
In most cases, yes.
Most cases. I mean, someone had said, how about after 6 months? I say, how about after 90 days? Someone stated, streamline the operations of the Parks Department to eliminate the 2 duplicate structures, the ballpark and parks. Maybe you can give me a little more information on that. With our new insurance company that we're going to be going with, how does the wellness program fit into that? Will it still offset insurance premiums? Someone asked for us to have a grant writer. I believe we have a full-time grant writer, do we not? Okay. One of my own thoughts was, why not have, and actually somebody did say, how the fire is maybe partnering with the city of Litchfield Park, other ways of doing that. I was thinking of a Molly trolley with maybe Avondale and Litchfield Park, where we could not only help with neighborhood circulators, helping our citizens get around, but on those cute little trolleys you can have signage and you can sell that signage. How about we have adopting parks? Why don't we adopt right-of-ways? We've got some ugly right-of-ways. And the billing for our ambulance services, there again, I need some more information about that. Postponing recommendations for the matrix report. I believe financially we're at a standstill at that anyway, are we not?
Most of them are at a standstill, but we're still moving forward on a couple of them.
Okay. And I've also asked that we continue the research and possibility of after-school programs. Not only is this another item that our citizens are asking for, but it can be a revenue producer. I have other things written, but those were the key aspects. I really appreciate everything and the time that has gone into this, and I look forward to continued discussions with the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Pizzillo.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. I, too, have had a chance to go through the document, and some of the things Council Member Osborne had covered, and so I won't go over all the detail. But when it comes to number one, a lot of my questions involve around some of the things that hopefully the city manager will bring to us on how they are addressing some of the issues that you identified in the compensation. And again, just a couple of them. It's my understanding, including the upcoming budget year, over the last 3 budget years, there has been no market or merit. My understanding is they're going to propose some cutbacks in compensation packages, some of the things that you had mentioned in here. I know as a member of the insurance committee many years ago when I used to be a member of it, they routinely looked at ways to cut costs, and it's my understanding that their initial request was about $1 million, that they've cut to about $400,000, and they're actually readjusting the program to and I think, and again, I may be speaking a little out of school, but some of those costs may be going up, but I suspect we'll be getting a presentation on that as well. So I think they're moving in some of those directions as far as on the health benefits packages. Also, as far as training and some of the other professional developments, it's my understanding the school reimbursement's gone. Is that correct? And a lot of the training opportunities have been removed. They were some of the first things to move. So I think they're moving in the direction to try to trim back some of those issues as well. And I think the key that you had mentioned there also was being competitive. So also I'd like a feedback from the manager as he puts together his package on where we are right now overall from a competitive package with our benefits, with our salaries, and et cetera. I think that would be helpful as we move forward. As a former budget manager, I like the idea somewhat of the zero base, but I also, when I got a little further, I always liked activity-based accounting where you actually broke things into by activities, so you know whether a specific activity was doing well or not as opposed to by departments. I know that was a new concept that was being bashed around when I left a couple years ago, but I always liked that idea, but it does require a major modification on how budget's done when you go to activity-based. But starting with a fixed cost and then going from there, I believe that's what they've been trying to do over the last 2 years through their cuts as that thing has been going. Also, it's my understanding about 2 to 3 years ago they had about 11 employees per 1,000, and right now if you take the stadium out it's about 7, it's under 8, it's my understanding, if that's correct, Manager?
Yes, it's 7.67.
So it appears we're moving somewhat in that right direction of trying to bring our employees per 1,000 down. At the same token, I don't think a whole lot of our direct service cuts have happened as well. We're still maintaining basic service levels. That's correct?
That is correct.
So I applaud the organization for moving in that direction. Restructuring debt, as you mentioned, that is an interesting concept. I'm a firm believer that not to focus on the rate, to focus on the levy. The rate is just a mathematical calculation. The problem I have with a significant change at this time is our residents have been so used to focusing on a rate. And in good times when the assessed valuations went up, we got more money because you take a rate time assessed valuations equals the levy, which is the tax. And right now, our citizens are hurting right now. And I like the concept. I really believe we should be focusing on levy. But I'd be a little leery right now in this environment to try to change that, because what would happen is those that are expecting their taxes to go up would actually not see that because of our prior policy, even though I do like that concept. And I tip the hat to coming up with that because I've been a proponent of that for years. Economic development, I think that's great. Supporter of economic development. In fact, we have some vacant commercial properties out there right now. I wish we could spend some time working on trying to find people within there. I know our economic development department is working real hard to try to bring in business, and then with Suntech is one of the major ones we've had recently as well. So I applaud them on that. On the stadium revenues, I'm 100% behind you on that. I understand, Councilmember Osborne's mentioning on the loss leader, so to speak, but I would like to see more activities out there that produce positive cash flow. I'd like to see us shrink that loss, whatever you want to call it, more by using that to bring in things that generate a positive cash flow. And I don't know what they are. I know we have an employee, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, right now, whose sole job is to do exactly that. Is that correct, Mike? So I know they're going to be working in that direction. So I'd like to see more positive cash flow as far as that goes. Capital projects. The only mention I would on that is we had a meeting the other day dealing with our capital projects, and a couple of things that I think we really need to move forward with because of the need and the outdated technology is the police radio system, and the other one we talked about on the phone system. This is an efficiency issue from the city is concerned, and those are the couple of ones that I would support because of the fact that I think we're falling a little bit behind those parts. I can support the frozen positions. I think that's a great idea. On bulk trash, as you mentioned, we've had some serious issues concerning that. And it is an enterprise fund, so in reality, if we make it, instead of every 2 weeks, we make it once a month or a quarter, we in essence don't really save money because we indirectly would bring down the cost to individuals. So the question I would have in this area is, are our citizens really want that service level drop? Because it's my understanding is over the years they've really, kind of prided themselves, since we were the only ones doing it, once a week, and then we went to twice. And you were probably around and heard some of the issues that happened to us and the troubles we kind of had when we try to get that information out. So, I like the concept, but I would recommend we proceed a little more cautiously in that area as some of the things that we have done in the past. The levy, I touched on that. No new debt. I think the couple that I mentioned most of it is impact fees, if I'm not mistaken, from the capital fund. So that won't require. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And the other one on the cost recovery, we had an ordinance that came before us a while back where we try to recover some of those. Some of it was from parks, some of it was from engineering, some of it was for planning and zoning. And I like what you had mentioned about trying to line revenues on those driving services, and I'm hoping that's coming back before us soon.
It's coming back to the council on May 10th.
Okay, thank you. On the billboards, I like the idea. We've had a discussion. I know there's some council members that aren't in favor, but I do kind of like the idea of looking for additional revenue sources, even taking a look at how we can use some of our services to generate some revenues. I think that's fantastic. Naming rights, I'm not sure how much money that would generate, but I also like those ideas as well. So one thing I like to do is a tip of the hat. I know, I've taught finance and accounting. I know there's other places you can be. There's called opportunity costs. And with your opportunity costs, you'd have been somewhere else other than here doing this. And I really appreciate the effort that you put in here. I know at times that you had mentioned it probably wasn't smooth sailing. But at the same token, you gave up time of your own to be somewhere else to help us out. And again, I really, really appreciate it. And a tip of the hat to all that participate. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cavalier.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank the committee for the hard work and perseverance with staying with us all these months to get this work done. You've done a tremendous job, and I, for one, and I think I speak for everyone on the council, really appreciate this very, very much. You've done a tremendous job and a tremendous service to the city and the citizens.
Thank you.
As far as going through each one of these, I agree with most of what most of the council has talked about. The reducing employee compensation, budgeting. In budgeting, tracking by department and tracking what's really being spent and how we can maybe curtail some of those expenditures. Every time I look at the expenses that we have to approve each council meeting when it comes to us, there are times I look at that and I have to shake my head a couple of times. Did we really need to spend that? Could we have gotten by without that? So some of these expenditures I'd like to see us at least track a little more closely, because I think, especially by department, and I think that idea that you mentioned that, and I think it's very important. Refinancing the debt, I'm not a finance guy, so I can't really speak to that. If that's going to work and if that will be something the citizens buy off on and it is something that will work, great, we need to look into that a little more deeply. The rainy day funds, to buy down the PIC funds, again, that's something, I think, the PIC bonds, I think that's something we need to look into, at least look at it. I don't know if that's even possible. The stadium. Yes, I expected much more out of the stadium as far as what we would receive, and I think that's something that we need to concentrate on. I think stadium staff, everyone involved in that, Mike on down, that we need to see if there isn't more ways to use that stadium to bring in more money to the city. And I think that's really important. We've got a facility out there that is glamorous, it's beautiful, it's one of the best in the whole valley. And it really ought to be, we ought to be working hard to pull something more in there than we're doing. I think Councilwoman Osborne mentioned that, and that I agree with. We need to do more with that. The trash pickup thing has never worked. It still isn't working. And that's very problematic. I think we need to do something to both cut the costs on that and maybe do something that sends a better message to our citizens, because there's still trash sitting out in some of the yards, and I'm hearing complaints about it all the time. So that so far is not working, and we need to look more deeply into that. The paper-free and postage-free operations costs. Along with the operations costs, there hasn't been anything said about Charles' department as far as maintenance of our streets and in that area. And I'm not. Have we covered that enough? Did you get enough information on that to do anything with that? So I think we need to look more deeply into that to see where does that need to be expanded? Does that need to be cut? Are we doing okay with that? I don't see the potholes in the city like there used to be, not as many anyway. But again, I don't know. I hope we're not over expending that, and I don't think we are. EMT services. Oh, that's something I would have to pass on that, because the fees and everything I think we need to look at that. I need more explanation on it. And selling naming rights. It's a great idea. And yes, you can make good money on that, because those naming rights, you can sell it by the month, you can sell it by the year, and there's so many things that we have that we could set up. The only thing I have concern about is naming something after a person that's alive, if we do it in memoriam for. I think it should be a naming rights of a company or a group of people, maybe even. But yes, naming rights can bring in a considerable amount of revenue. So I'm very much in favor of that. Then looking at your general recommendations, some of these others down here in this general, I think this is great. Especially this sharing with other cities. We need to look more into that direction. What was the other one? On the volunteering. There are many people in this city who want to volunteer that we haven't been able to get to. I know we set up this volunteer program, and we have all kinds of volunteer. And I tell them, get on the internet, go down to the city and check. It's there. They don't know how to do it. We need to get that word out, and we need to use more volunteers in that area. That would help this considerably. And the rest of this, you said consider the cost for recovery rate on many of the services, and you said in parks, you specifically pointed out parks and recreation. I'm not sure I want to go along with that if I understand it right. Maybe I don't understand what you're getting at there, but do we need to charge more for parks and recreation activities, or that I think we have to look at?
It was more of a consistency question relative to the different kinds of services that are provided.
Okay.
Should the entire set of fees be looked at for Parks and Rec? That just happened to be the one area where the committee spent a lot of time talking about specifically was Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
There are other areas to examine for fee generation. Just Parks and Rec happened to be the most significant one discussed.
Okay, because this is anyway. That's something we really need to look at, and I think something that would help us too is we work out some kind of a joint agreement with the county on this big park down here south of us. They are having problems. They've had problems since day one because they don't have the maintenance equipment or crews that are familiar with this kind of a park. All the other county parks are desert parks, and they know that, and they've found that this is where they excel because they're equipped to handle that. They are not equipped to handle this park, and we need to work out something with the county to take that park over or to work with them. There was an agreement years ago. I found this out just recently. The county parks were put together for the people and for the cities that they were in or were adjacent to, And they were supposed to be, by the county, those were supposed to be turned over to those cities at an appropriate time. And that has never happened. And I don't know what that appropriate time is, but that's something we need to look into, because I think we can turn a park like that, especially turn that around and make that an income generator even. Maybe not, but it's something at least to do some research on and look into. And other than that, I think this committee has done a tremendous job. I'm very proud to say that they're a part of a committee that worked well in this city. Not only that, I've heard stories from other cities who've done these budget committees that were, the thing went pretty tough. And you guys seem to be doing you did a great job working together. It was really a team effort, and you worked very well as a team. You all should be congratulated for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And thank you, Mike.
Vice Mayor Lord?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the committee. I know from having worked on a committee how many hours and what a great sacrifice it is for you to make each meeting, and then it's just not the meeting. You go home and you have to study the material. And I just think what we do for each Monday night council meeting, and it's a lot of reading and it's a lot of investigating and study, and I really do appreciate it. I also appreciate the number of hours that staff took to gather their briefings, to make it user-friendly, so that you could make your sacrifice of your evenings to come before this committee and give your briefings. And I really do thank you, and I thank our city manager also for your contributions. When this first started, I have to tell you, I was a little uneasy. I attended a meeting and heard some things I didn't like. So I walked away with, I wasn't sure the goal was where it should have been, or the charge, or whatever. But for me, being patient is very hard to be, but I decided to step back and be patient. And you heard me at one council meeting. I almost came forth to discuss something on the committee, but I shut my mouth for a change. And I think it paid off on my part when I read the actual end of this report. It was constructive, and I appreciate that. And there is so much in the report, and I've read highlighted, yellow highlighted. I've read this thoroughly, and I'm going to make some comments. But to the city manager, what I feel is that so many times when we have work sessions and we have a discussion like this, we really don't have the time to really vet out what the issue is and what decision direction we should go into. One council person says this, one says that, and we have to come very quickly on a decision. So we used to do retreats. Now, I don't think we can do a 3-day retreat or anything like that. But what I would like to see us do is a 4-hour retreat, or a half-day retreat where we came forth and talked about some of these suggestions, because some of them probably are easier to do during the time frame between we're now going into May, and the budget is at the end of June 30th. So I'm just saying I'm not so sure that all these changes can be easily done and decisions can be made on them. Some of them can, and I think you as a city manager will be able to look at this and determine that. So that's my first suggestion to the council, is that we spend a little bit more time. They spent a lot of time on it, and we owe that to them to come together and hash it out. So that's my first suggestion. Okay, compensation. There has been a lot of sacrifices already made by staff, and I'm not saying there can't be more, but I am saying contribution to retirement, college assistant, training, no merit or market adjustment. This year will be the third year that's happened. Reduction of overtime. We've frozen some salaries. Will be coming up into 3 years with no increases. I want to emphasize that. So I'll just kind of go through. All of you had such good suggestions and comments on this, so I don't want to take time away from anything that you said. I didn't know what run rate was, so I had to go and research it and study it. And I guess in run rate, my question is, do you use the first 6 months of expenses, then you just double that, and that's the figure you go on?
That's one area that we explored, specifically trying to look at how big of a problem does the city really facing. And so our way of trying to calibrate it from a not a city manager or from an outsider's point of view. We tried to use a method that we could translate it from a point of view of a business person.
Okay.
And so that's why we focused on that particular information. It's pretty easy to go back, not necessarily just in the last 6 months, but to go back over a couple of years, and you can see a trend to emerge relative to what are you really committing to in terms of actual costs for day-to-day city operation. So the recommendation isn't necessarily just for a specific period of time, but actually multiple years should be examined and evaluating, okay, am I on a trend here relative to what it takes me to run the city day to day? So our recommendation is to go beyond necessarily 6 months, but look at multiple fiscal years relative to trending that information.
All right, thank you. On number 3, on reduce the PIC series of bonds, I had questions on the legality of it.
Right.
So, you know, I really couldn't come to a decision-making on that at all because I definitely think that is something that needs to be pursued and looked into.
One comment we put in the very end of the introduction of the report is that clearly some of these issues or some of our recommendations potentially have legal implications, and we certainly recommend city attorney to be consulted relative to the evaluation of these items, simply from the point of view is that some of them may not be, for all practical purposes, be legal.
Right.
We did not have the expertise to make that determination.
Sure,
But
and I
fundamentally-
don't either, so
Right.
you're not alone.
Right.
Okay. So again, the retreat would be another way of being able to discuss that and have the information brought forth. When you talked about economic development, I agree, and I do want you to know that they're working very hard in a new program called The Leading Edge. So they are getting out in the trenches and promoting it. The one thing I want you to know on business retention, we used to have a position, and we no longer have that. We never replaced Barbara, is that right? So you're absolutely right, and she did a good job. And do we miss that position? Absolutely. Is it a position maybe we want to bring back? That needs to be a discussion about that. So I just want you to know that that was a long-time focus of Goodyear. On the rainy day funds, we had a lot of discussion on the council. Some people didn't want to touch a dime of it. Some people wanted to. So I guess we as a council need to talk about and come to a decision how we feel about the rainy day. Some feel it's a sacred cow. Some don't. So to me, that has to be discussed more. It's kind of hard with the stadium, and we're pretty tight contractually on what we can make from concessions. That's really up to the teams. Is that correct? My assumption on that?
Yes, it is.
Yes. So we're limited there. Where we had anticipated revenue was the outsigning liner of the stadium and all the activity that was, all the things that were going to be built. It didn't happen. Right. So now we're like empty pockets. So I agree with you. I don't know if there could be things that we do more of in the parking lot, in the space of raising funds of some event. So I think we need to check into that. I do know the Parks and Recreation has been working very, very hard on getting other venues in there to make money. So they'll just continue to do that. Let me look here where I'm at now. Again, I have to agree with Joe on suspending capital projects. I think we have to be careful of that. There were some very big needs, and I know you agree with that. You've seen them, and they were I think it was the third choice. They were practical needs, and so we can't ignore them. On the reduce the bulk pickup. Oh my goodness, I live in Pebble Creek. Let me tell you. The number of emails I got, and I couldn't go any place for a week without getting stopped and the finger in my face. So I want us to be very careful on how we make that decision. Not that I'm against some of these suggestions, but I will tell you it's very contentious in my neighborhood. Eliminate the frozen positions. I guess I don't really have a strong opinion on that. If we wipe them off the docket, if that's going to be a psychological thing or what, and bring them back. So I'm fuzzy on that.
I have a list prepared for you all as far as what positions we can eliminate, and it's most of them.
Okay.
But there's some positions that we need to maintain simply because as the economy recovers, we will have to move quickly. For example, from an economic development standpoint and a building inspection standpoint, we'll need to recover quickly and move quickly.
Especially the planning department, that worries me, because we do have some builders out there that are starting to get active. So I wouldn't want to hurt that. Cutting costs using green thinking. I'm a greenie, but I have to tell you, you have to be careful. Sometimes it ends up costing you more than what the sacrifice you're making. So I'm an in-focus fan. I don't know if we could change it in the fact that through utility bills, you get a choice. You check off. If you want the in-focus sent to you, you check it off. So we would limit, and those people that wanted to read it online, so maybe then would be half the people would want a hard copy. I'm a hard copy person. That was I grew up in that age, so I enjoy that part of it. So that might be a way to cut the cost, but yet still furnish it to those people that really desire a hard copy. I think it's real hard on number 11 to assess the primary property tax levy. I have to tell you, having been a real estate person, and the last few years I've told people, hold on, this next year you're not going to have to pay. Your tax bills, you're going to pay, but it's going to be less. So now we're going to face those people and say, whoop, we just changed the formula. So guess what? You're not going to get a break. I think that's a hard sell right now. So I have a question on that. The billboards, I really like seeing that. Thank you. I'm a billboard lady. I like those billboards, and I'm 100% for it. And I thought that was a very good idea about advertising on city cars. I don't know what the legality of it is, but, I remember when we ran for office, I had a sign I stuck on my car. Hey, it might be a good venue. We'll have to see. The new fees, you already know that we're considering that. And it's interesting because I missed the one on false alarms. I wasn't here that evening, and it didn't sound like it went too well with the council because they were worried about the possibility of not investigating if someone fainted or died, so that didn't go over well. So I guess we need another presentation because my understanding it did not go well. So thank you. EMT services. Again, I think that's a hard sell. I think people pay their taxes because they think through those taxes that they're going to get fire and police, and that's a given. So there's my concern there. So someone would have to convince me that this would be a possibility that the public would accept. I love the idea of the selling the naming rights for the seats and venues. Good idea. They do it all over, and I think that's just terrific. And I would buy a seat. So good job on that. I like the idea about the sidebar you said about corporations adopting a park. I think any business adopting a park, any youth organization could adopt a park. Churches, we have a faith community, a very active committee now. They could do that. So I'm looking forward to the possibility of that. And under the general recommendations, I thought that was interesting in the schools, but the schools don't have any money, so I'm not so sure if they could afford to share the SRO costs, but I thought the idea was good. I'm for the Litchfield Park agreement, and so I see that you were considering that. We didn't really have the true agreement at that time. Free salaries, hey, we've done it. Engage cost employees in identifying cost reductions. I do believe we have a committee, right, the city? And they have been looking, all departments.
Yes.
Yeah, all departments are required to do this, and it's continuous. And that's not going to go away. Expand volunteer. We went to the volunteer evening appreciation night this week. Could you tell me how many volunteers and how many volunteer hours? Does anybody remember that?
In excess of 23,000 hours.
For what period of time?
That was from a year ago till now, till the end of April.
So you can see we are definitely doing that. I agree with you. You need to keep working on the program and expanding it. And if you could have seen the people receiving the awards, the mayor explained the police department, the volunteer service there, it's outstanding. So yes, I would like to see more of it, but I just want you to know that staff has worked very hard on growing that program, and we do have a number of volunteers. We had the biggest evening out ever. Was there over 200 people?
Over 240 people.
240 people. So we could do more, but if we do, we're going to have to do it outside for sure. We'd never be able to put it in a building. And then my last question, and I'm just asking this because of the city center, and I remember my committee and how it worked. You had 27 people on the committee, but only 9 signed it. Wait a minute, let's see, 18 signed it. What happened to the other 9?
They weren't present at the night that we finalized our recommendations.
Okay,
So the people who were physically present represent the committee members who actually signed it.
Okay, so those people did attend all the meetings, and or most of the meetings did?
I don't think it was all the meetings, most.
We have a list of the attendance roster, and we can send that out to the council so you're aware of what the attendance was.
Well, then I want to
Most of them were not in total attendance.
Then I want to give an extra thanks for those people that showed up and signed this. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can I keep going here, Rourke? I can knock this off in 5. Okay? The reason I'm worried is we have a meeting that's supposed to start at 6, and it's legally supposed to start at 6, so we'll be a little late on that. I'll try and be very quick. The first 2 items are your big ones, reduce employee comp and the zero-based budgeting. On the employees, I agree we do need to strive to reduce the cost of our people. I am opposed to, unless a job simply doesn't need to be done, and I hope we don't have any of those now, that I would be against putting anyone out in the street right now. The problem with that in government, it's usually the people who can least afford to be out in the street. So I don't want to release people. But I do think that your suggestions are good ones. We should look at furloughs. We should look at graduated pay reductions, particularly heavier at the upper end. Longevity plan, that should be considered also. So something I would suggest, because we've really had difficulty with this over the last year and a half. If we were to say to the staff, find a way to cut $2 million from your compensation budget, the cost of people, where would the people want that to be cut? Not the department heads, but those below them. Where would they like to see those cuts made? If they were said, cut $2 million, we aren't saying we're going to do it, but you show me where you're going to cut $2 million, and let the people tell us where they would like to see that $2 million cut. I think that's a worthwhile thing doing. Zero-based budgeting, I assume you're really serious about starting this next fiscal year, correct? And that's a good idea. Restructure current debt, I agree. Let's do it. Support economic development for new revenue. The only thing, I agree there, the only thing I'd add is the single most important thing I think for the future of Goodyear is higher education. That's obviously an economic development driver, affects all of the aspects of growth in Goodyear. So I would incorporate that. I think we should seriously look at adjusting the rainy day fund and using maybe some of that fund for things such as higher education. Not for O&M, but for higher education. We need to cut costs to meet O&M and balance our budget. Enhance stadium revenue, great. Suspend capital projects unless for public safety or revenue recovery. I'm not sure I know what revenue recovery is, but I would add to that, suspend capital projects unless for public safety or to support economic development. Bulk pickup. Question for I hope we have someone here from Public Works. Charles is probably here. There he is. Where, I assume that the brown container, that trash, that's real trash, goes to the Glendale landfill. Is that correct?
Goes to the transfer station.
Okay, and then it'll go to there or maybe Buckeye or somewhere. Okay. Where does the bulk go? So why don't we give people an extra container for regular trash pickup?
They have that option.
Well, then I don't think we know to do that, though. If in fact we can put bulk and it's going to the same place, I don't know why we even need a special day, as long as we have the capability to retain that. The only thing we're talking about are like, you know, you can put your grass, you can put your cuttings in a big container. You can't put your old refrigerator or your chairs. But the vast majority of bulk pickup is landscaping. Is that correct or no? Yeah, but we need to look at that. Maybe that's enough.
Charles, would you please come up to the microphone if you're going to speak?
I apologize. A lot of it is landscaping trash, yes. And we can do some more analysis to determine, you know, how we modify the program, how we can improve the efficiencies.
Yeah,
Give more education to the public.
I'm an ardent supporter of bulk pickup. I think it's great for our people. I like our people to be out there. It's a very healthy environment to be out there working in your yard. We want to do that. We want to support that. But maybe we can do that already with the capabilities we have by adding to that.
One program, Mayor, that we are trying to promote, we're doing a pilot, in terms of the landscaping waste. If we can keep that out of the landfill flow altogether, it reduces our tipping fees. So we're looking at being able to modify that and convert that waste into a mulch that can be recycled and reused that keeps it out of the landfill flow. That reduces our overall cost. So we are doing a pilot program with that now.
Okay, so therefore you would not put it in the brown container. Okay, right?
If it's commingled, then it makes it impossible to do anything with that waste afterwards.
I agree. Yeah. All right, so if that's important, then we do need a separate bulk pickup, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, eliminate frozen positions. I agree with that. It sounds like the city manager is going to come in with a recommendation on that. Cut operation costs, absolutely. Assess the primary property tax levy to keep it at the current revenue level, and as a person representing a city, I like it. As a resident of the city, I don't like it. And there's 64,000 people out there that probably wouldn't like it because they've been paying against a specific rate, and the value of their investment has declined after years of going up, and now there's an opportunity for that tax to go down. So a little concerned about that one. No new debt in 2011, 2010 or 2011. That sort of conflicts with suspend capital projects, except for public safety and, I said, economic development. Billboard, we've talked about that. I don't find too much opposition to that. Consider new fees. I'm not too gung-ho for that idea, but we're going to be presented with a $500,000 suggestion on increasing fees, I think, in the very near future. So we'll look at that. Maybe, is that what you're referring to? It's across the board.
Across
fees.
the board, right.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know that we want to do that. But, and then self-naming rights, boy, that's a good idea. If we can, I guess you're talking about names on seats and names on pavers and stuff like that. Okay, so where do we go from here?
You tell me.
Okay.
We'd certainly be more than interested to engage any member of council. I know the CPC members would enjoy the opportunity for follow-on discussion if necessary. We'd certainly like to hear some feedback at some point in time in the future, what happened. I would suspect there are many CPC members like myself who would want to come back and kind of check in to see how things are going. We all recognize we've given you you've given us a complex problem, and we've given you complex recommendations, okay? So that's the reality of it. But we were interested to see some of these ideas germinate and mature as a part of the 2010-2011 budget process, if not for the next fiscal year, but for future fiscal years. We really would like to see the city take a hard look at these items and make a determination. The committee, again, has a very, very broad view relative to the citizens. I believe the city of Goodyear has spoken, and has spoken through this committee to the city council and the city manager. We're very, very passionate about what we've put in front of you for recommendations. We would like to make sure that they've given their due course of evaluation.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You have done your duty. The people have done their duty, and you need to be a part of this continually. you need to confirm that we respond in a positive, thorough, comprehensive way to every suggestion. So I would encourage you to stick around at these meetings. The difficulty here is some of these apply tomorrow and some don't apply for several months.
Agreed.
But some of them apply with the budget that you'll be doing this year, this month, next month.
Yes, and we're already trying to incorporate as much as we can.
Okay, so we really need to correlate those in a specific, defined manner to these suggestions, and then we'll see what's still to be done.
Right.
Is that all right?
That'd be great.
And then be assured we will respond to everything comprehensively. That's our duty. But great job. And impressive that you were selected as the commander-in-chief of this outfit.
I'm still
So,
scratching my head on that one, but
they must respect you, Mike, and they certainly, I understand why they would.
thank you.
No, everybody likes Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's our work session, is that correct? Okay, are we ready to go in the meeting?
Mayor, just a real quick one. As a follow-up what the vice mayor was mentioning, is there any value, or I guess I'm asking the manager, is there any value from a time standpoint to have a 4-hour advance to see what, how the manager may incorporate some of these suggestions so we have more time to go over this discussion? I kind of like the vice mayor's suggestion. I mean, we only get an hour. We have, an hour and 20 minutes, and there's some very, complicated issues on here, and I'm just wondering if there's value or time, because I know there's a time crunch to getting this current budget through there. I mean, is there time and value? I'm just throwing that out to the members here. Do you think it's something of value to do?
Yeah, I actually was surprised we weren't having our retreat. We've had it the last 3 years that I've known, so why aren't we having it?
I can certainly check the schedule. We've been working so hard with the Citizens Budget Committee. We spent over 5,000 full-time equivalent man-hours on this project. That's 2.5 people, full-time equivalents. I mean, so we can take a look at that. The budget meetings that we have coming up now are on the 3rd, 10th, and 17th. We will be presenting the entire budget to you. I believe on the 3rd, we have basically an opportunity to meet for as long as it will take, because I believe that's the only item on the agenda for that evening, and there is no city council meeting that evening either. So we'll be able to spend some time then. Pardon me?
What night is this?
May 3rd,
Okay.
next Monday.
All right.
Okay, so we'll spend as long as we need.
And you can come forth with some of that information that they've all
We certainly hope so.
all right,
Okay.
the legal part of it and all that. Thank you.
Okay, let me adjourn this meeting, and then if we're going into a council meeting, it won't be very long, I don't believe. Paula, will it? Well, no, it's mostly yours. So if you'd like to hang around, you're welcome to, but we'll give you a minute to head out if you'd rather head out, too. So, okay, this meeting's adjourned.